Allahu 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 Allah Allahu 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 Allah.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Who is Who in America. Today we're very pleased to have with us in Al Hikmat studio Professor Daniel Alvarez. Welcome to the show, Professor. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And for our viewers out there, Professor Daniel Alvarez is a very, very intellectual person, a very blessed person, a very godly person. I've known him for many, many years. We appeared on different talk shows over the past years, and I have really learned to respect him and admire his knowledge in world religions, interfaith, Islam, and the full 9 yards. So it's a pleasure, and I'm sure that both you viewers out there would benefit a lot after hearing the spiritual and the educational background and experience of Professor Alvarez. So once more, welcome to the show, Professor.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's really a blessing, and I have been trying to get you for many years now, and it has been our fault in not being a little more insistent in trying to ensure that you're here.
Well, I'm here and I hope to be back again.
Good. Thank you very much again. So our viewers worldwide are people from all different walks of life, Muslims, non-Muslims. You know what the world is made up of. So I'm sure what you have to share with our audience will be very interesting on this show of Who is Who in America on Al Hikmat TV. And as I told you before the show started, other television networks worldwide take this show and broadcast it on their television network. So we have viewers worldwide who can benefit. So we're going to be talking a lot about Islamophobia, your understanding of Muslims and Islam, what you have to say about moderate people not condemning terrorism. You know, those are some of the issues that non-Muslims got. And as a Christian, you are a Christian by faith, as a Christian professor who teaches world religions, and as you also mentioned to me before we began the show, when you speak about Judaism and Christianity and Islam, you do not really speak on them as separate, but as one religion of the Abrahamic faiths, more or less.
Totally.
So I'm sure our non-Muslim viewers and Muslim viewers out there will definitely benefit because of the Islamophobia mentality we got out there, a lot of the anti-Muslim scenario of people thinking that moderate Muslims do not condemn terrorism and all the crazy things done by radical Muslims. And I agree, and I'm sure that you agree, that there are a lot of radical Muslims out there. There are radical people of other religions. There are a lot of crazy people out there. But it's people like you and I who are supposed to make these issues more clear in the minds of the intellectuals to differentiate the religion from the people who don't follow their religion and misrepresent their religion. But before we get into those things, Professor, I want to share with our audience, and you got to do that, a little bit of your background. You're a man from Harvard. You got 2 masters from Harvard. So what are those areas that you got your masters from Harvard?
Well, I am by training a theologian, a Christian theologian, but the Harvard, I have 2 master's degrees from Harvard. Half of my coursework was in religion and half of it was in philosophy, so I have that dual background. But Harvard emphasizes interfaith dialogue and the study of world religions. So I came out of Harvard with this attitude that religion cannot be taught in isolation. It has to be taught in conversation with other faiths and understanding the depths of different religious traditions and how much they have in common. There might be differences, but religions have more in common than their differences. And even the Holy Quran says communities with different beliefs need to work together and challenge each other in good works. I think that's one of my favorite verses of the Quran.
Of course.
And so that's what the work of interfaith dialogue is all about. When I was in Boston, apart from my education at Harvard, one of the most important things that happened to me is that I was dean at a historically black college, Roxbury Community College. And if my brothers and sisters watching this program live in Boston, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's in the heart of the black community, near Mission Hill.
So you lived amongst those people?
I lived among those people for at least 5 years before I came to Miami in 1994.
Wow.
And one of the important things about that experience is not only did I get to meet and work with people who had been with Dr. King, with Malcolm X in the civil rights movement in the 60s and the 70s, but I also got to meet a very vibrant, very disciplined, very committed student Muslim population and Muslim faculty members that really encountering them and interacting with them really changed my life.
So what year are we talking about here?
In the late 80s,
Okay.
mid 87 to 91, those are the years that I was in Boston.
So
But-
you have had that experience with Muslims and Islam long before 9/11 and all this media
Exactly.
anti-Islamic scenario, Islamophobia talk.
Precisely.
You have been with Muslims and know about Muslims many years
Many
before
years.
that.
Let me tell you a wonderful experience that I had. And again, I should have said at the beginning, assalamu alaikum and shalom to my Jewish and Christian and Muslim brothers and sisters out there that are watching the program. One incredibly important experience for me was that one year I was in transition from one contract to another at the university, and the contract was not processed in time, and I didn't have money to pay my rent.
Wow.
I had a wife, I have 2 kids, and the Muslim students heard about it and raised $1,200. $1,200 is a lot of money today, but imagine back in the 90s.
those days.
A lot of money. And they brought it to my house, and I was just totally overwhelmed. I said, what can I do to repay you? He says, you don't have to repay you, but come and pray with us. And the young man was a Syrian origin. He had lost his faith while studying in Boston. He was an engineering student. Found his faith. He came back to Islam, worshiping and praying with the black Muslims, not the Nation of Islam, but Orthodox Muslims in the black community, Sunni Muslims in the black community. And he reconverted back to his own faith. But he doesn't worship and he didn't pray at the very wonderful mosque in Quincy, Massachusetts. He chose to pray with the black Muslims in Dorchester, in the heart of the black community.
How interesting.
And he prays at the mosque of Malcolm X. That's his mosque, his masjid. He took me there. And I was very blessed to see not only African American Muslims, but to see Irish Muslims, Chinese Muslims, Hispanic Muslims, Arab Muslims in the same place praying. And then he taught me so much about Islam. He taught me about the kindness of the sense of brotherhood and sisterhood in the Islamic community, how these people, even though I was not a Muslim, treated me as a brother and helped me in the time of need. And then I saw how in Islam truly there is no racial or cultural barriers. Like I said, Irish, Chinese, Hispanic, whites, everybody was there in the same mosque praying alongside African American Muslims. And that taught me a lot, I think, a lot about what Islam is all about.
So when you look at the present time and some of the journalists of nowadays, I don't like to paint a brush on the entire media,
Right.
but I'll say some of the journalists of today, you know, with all this anti-Muslim, anti-Islamic, you know, comments and criticism and this Islamophobia thing, and that kind of experience you have had, don't you see a great difference? What you experience today against Islam and Muslims, do you get that kind of feelings in the 80s
Well-
when you were there with this multicultural and multiracial group of Muslims?
Exactly. This is the thing. This is the Islam that most people don't know and don't want to know, because it would shatter the stereotypes of who Muslims are and what Islam is. And so, remember, it's not attractive to cover Muslims condemning acts of terrorism by deranged so-called Muslims, right, who distort the religion of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and carry all these heinous acts of crimes and killing. We've seen it. I mean, we've seen it all for years now,
Of
with
course,
ISIS, with Al-Qaeda, so everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. But what hurts, I think, is that the media does not portray and does not find important, excuse me, to highlight how Muslims and the moderate Muslims, and they are the majority, oppose this heinous act of terrorism in Europe, in the United States, and everywhere in the world. They don't get the publicity. When the imams get together and sign declarations opposing and condemning the acts of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, There is no press for those people.
Right.
Throughout the Muslim world, whether it be Egypt or Saudi Arabia, whether it be Jordan, whether it be Pakistan, whether it be the United States, Muslims have risen saying, this is not Islam, this does not represent us. But what kind of coverage should they get? No coverage whatsoever. So I think that kind of fans, Imam, the flames of Islamophobia. You hear the slogans, they want to bring Sharia here, they want to convert our nation to Islam by force. And that's the kind of fear that is very destructive, and I think it makes lives for Muslims in Europe and the United States very, very difficult. But one of the wonderful things, by the way, that I'm involved here in Miami since I left Boston, is the creation of a Jaffer Muslim World Studies Center. I'm very proud to say.
And you're a member of
I'm
that.
a member. I'm affiliated faculty of the Jaffer Muslim World Studies Center. Dr. Jaffer is well known to all of you as a philosopher. He's been on the show.
He's been a good friend of mine for many years.
Yes, Dr. Jaffer is he gave the foundational gift, and we have a center. It's named after him and his wife, Jaffer's Muslim World Studies Center. And one of the things that we're doing there is Muslim Christian Jewish dialogue, because we feel that Islam interacts with all of these religions.
Of course.
As I said, the way I teach Islam at FIU, I don't separate Islam from Judaism and Christianity. The three are Abrahamic religions. And if you read the Quran, you see how much of Islam is indebted to Judaism and Christianity and the religion of all the prophets. And that's the way we combat these false stereotypes and the false fears that people are forming. So we hope, and it is our hope, that the Muslim World Studies Center at FIU will be at the forefront of dispelling those stereotypes and those horrible images that people have of Islam in the West.
So as a professor, because I think our viewers need to know this, that you are a senior instructor and professor at the Florida International University.
In the Department of Religious Studies.
In the Department of Religious Studies.
Yes.
So people like you, Professor, with that sort of educational background, you are teaching the leaders of tomorrow.
Yes.
The presidents of tomorrow, the doctors of tomorrow, the mayors, the commissioners, the politicians, the leaders, so to speak, of tomorrow. So it's people like you who really need to do a lot of this clarification from a very educational point of view to the leaders of tomorrow.
Let me say something to you. The Jaffer Muslim World Studies Center at FIU is part of the larger school, the Green School of International and Public Affairs. What that means then is that we recognize at FIU that religion is at the very center of all of the major economic, social, political issues in the world. Not only in the Middle East, but throughout the world, because we teach Hinduism, we teach Buddhism, we teach all religions. So we touch every area of the world. I'm very proud to say, and some of the viewers have heard it, that Secretary of State, former Secretary of State John Kerry said, if I had known, after I went through trying to negotiate the peace with the Palestinians and the Israelis, if I had to do it all over again, I would have majored in religious studies.
Interesting.
This is the Secretary of State. So I think what people are realizing,
who have a living experience of what's going on in the world.
He said, if I had known more about Islam, more about Judaism, more about my own Christian faith, I would have been a better negotiator. I would have understood the concerns of the parties that I was trying to sit together at the table and negotiate a peace. And I think that's something that is incredibly important. That's why we need to support a place like the Jaffer Muslim World Studies Center. And we need to bring people from all over the world to the center and bring the center all over the world. And we hope to shape public policy in the United States, because the center is the place where we can, and what we do in teaching world religions, where we can dissipate all these false stereotypes by giving the students, like you said, the future politicians and mayors, business people of the world, given the right information so they can create a better world community based on justice and based on peace.
You know, I have always been telling politicians and religious leaders that peace in the world, peace in the East, in the Middle East, in the West, wherever it is, you know, we hear Middle East and peace, but there is need for peace in the entire world.
Totally.
You got chaos all over the world. You look at the American media, the kind of things that is going on in politics, in the White House, in Congress, in the Senate. There is need for love and peace in the entire world.
And the best way to achieve that kind of peace is mutual understanding. We believe at FIU that if you put a Muslim and a Christian and a Jew together, things will happen. Wonderful things will
Yes.
happen. You know, in my classes, I require all my students to do a site visit report. They have to go to a place of worship of a religion other than their own. It is so wonderful to tell all of you, all the viewers, that my Jewish students go to a mosque because Maimonides, the Rambam, one of the great authorities in Judaism, says if you don't have a place to pray, go to a mosque. He didn't say go to a Christian church.
Yes.
Go to a mosque. And these Israeli Jews, not only American Jews, Israeli Jews that have come to FIU to study, when they do their site visit, they go to a mosque. And they come back wonderful. It doesn't mean they agree with everything, but they understand that the God of Islam and the God of Judaism is the same God. And yet all the time in the United States we hear, no, the God of Islam is a different God. What better proof do you have of the falsehood of that statement that an Israeli Jew, when he or she chooses to worship, goes to a mosque?
Of course. And
That is, to me, a most wonderful testimony.
You will hear Jews telling you, and I've had rabbis tell me this all the time, that the closest religion to Judaism is Islam.
Totally.
They have always confessed the closest religion to Judaism is Islam, which means that there is a bond and connection with Judaism and Islam.
Islam.
But on another note, Professor, speaking of Jafar Muslim World Studies Center, maybe we need to have an interview on this show on Al Hikmah TV, which will be broadcasted worldwide, on a little more details on what this center is doing or will be doing and how the world and people can benefit from this center. So maybe you're in the right position to set that up. We can probably have yourself and someone else come by and we can concentrate a little more in details, which may be an encouragement to other universities to do the same.
I'm going to bring this message and this experience back to the university and tell Dr. Mohadim Misbahi, who is the founding director of the Muslim World Studies Center.
Excellent.
By the way, I worked as director of the initiative for 3 years. So now Dr. Mohadim Misbahi, who's a close friend of Dr. Jafar, is the founding member. So maybe he can come, or maybe a few of our faculty can come and be here and they can answer more questions about the center. But again, this is
I
a
want it to
wonderful
be, I want it to
enterprise.
be an encouragement also. You know, I like to think ahead to other universities, just as the secretary said, John Kerry, if he had known more of religion, it would have made his job an easier job and a better job done.
Yes.
So I think if more universities can do what you all are doing there with this Jafar Muslim World Studies Center and encourage other universities to do at that level. I know they do basic world religious studies, but we're looking for some more depth into what you all are doing. So I think if the world knows that, it may encourage some more better understanding and tolerance because of what's going on with Islamophobia and Islam and Judaism and Christianity and Muslims in the world today.
You know, let me get back, if I may, to the fact that I do teach world religions at FIU. And to me, I have to emphasize again, and it's not being redundant, I think it's very important for the viewers to hear this, that I said I teach Islam, Judaism, and Christianity at the same time. And anybody who's read the Quran realizes that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did not come to create a new religion. He came to proclaim the religion of all the prophets. And once you realize that, it makes it impossible for anybody who knows anything about Islam to hate a Jew or to hate a Christian.
Of course.
Because these are people of the
You
book.
cannot.
One of the wonderful things one of my colleagues said to me, listen, I've had many wonderful experiences at FIU as a professor. I already told you about my wonderful experience in Boston, teaching at a historically black college with all that Muslim population that taught me so much with their lives and their generosity towards me. But Dr. Sima Pesaris, who teaches at FIU, she said to me one day, she was lecturing in my class, and she says, I cannot hate a Jew or a Christian because the prophets of these two religions are mentioned in my holy book. And I thought that was just such a wonderful, wonderful expression. This is the kind of love and understanding and acceptance that breaks down the barriers of hate and division. It is incumbent upon us, who are educators, to teach the world, teach our students about that reality. not the reality of the media, not the reality of Islamophobia, people who criticize Islam without having read the Quran or having interacted with Muslims. By bringing people together, by showing what the Quran says, by showing how Islam is grounded in the religion of all the prophets, how indebted, right, it is to these other two religions, and how much it embraces them, right, as people of the book. Let me add, chapter 2 of the Quran, chapter 5 of the Quran, talks about God gave these two peoples a revelation from God.
Yes.
And then, I already quoted it, unite, work together.
An area of commonality.
In commonality, things that you have in common for the betterment of humanity.
Yes.
I mean, how could Samuel Huntington, right, who should have known better, write an essay about the clash of civilizations pitting the Judeo-Christian West against a Islamic East, as if these two civilizations were in a perpetual struggle and clash and seeking each other's destruction? That's just a total falsehood. But most people don't even know this. Most people have bought into Huntington because he was a professor of American civilization at Harvard.
Yes.
That's, even educated people can fall into false dichotomies that are incredibly destructive, and we need educators, and there I'm very proud to say I'm one of them.
Of course,
to
and you're blessed to be that.
Dispel the myths of what Islam really is in relationship to these other two great world religions.
Of course. Speaking about that, Professor, that brings me to another point, which again I've always been telling people, that religious leaders and politicians, based on what John Kerry said, need to work together for peace and better understanding and tolerance in the world. If people have a better understanding of each other's faith and beliefs, we would really be a happier and more loving people in the world. Because unfortunately, some politicians, I don't say all, you got wonderful people who are politicians, but I don't know if politics make them corrupted, but God knows best. They use religion to create animosity and enmity among other people so that they may lead and they will strive. And education is one of that light. In Arabic, we say al-ilmun nurun, knowledge is light. When people are educated on other people's faith and culture, they will have no choice but, as you have been saying, to work on that verse of the Quran, areas of commonalities to come together. Yes. Last night, I was in a panel discussion at Florida Atlantic University. And in the discussion, I was asked about my background, etc. And at one point in time, I was born Muslim. But at one point in time, my life shifted to Christianity. I remember praying to Jesus, going to church. I had a scholarship to become a pastor or priest. So I told the rabbi, I said, I love this sort of panel discussion and interfaith discussion because I consider myself a born Muslim who practiced Christianity, and today I'm an Orthodox Jew. And he was like, wow, what do you mean? I said because this rabbi is a Reform Jew. So every time there was a question from the audience, whatever the Orthodox Jews say about it, Islam says about it, because we are very Abrahamic.
Very Abrahamic.
And you teach Judaism and Christianity and Islam, and you will know that. In most cases, Orthodox Jews and the Orthodox Muslims, we're on the same page, we're on the same belief, and to a point, in most cases, Christianity also, Orthodox Christians, sure. We're on this because we are Abrahamic background, same God, same messengers, same message.
Let me give you another example. I already mentioned an Israeli Jew who sat in front of us and says, we asked him point blank, people were curious, and he said, no, the God of Islam and the God of Judaism is the same God. I had a young woman, Orthodox Jewish woman, and she had to do a site visit. I says, Professor Alvarez, I cannot do a site visit. I cannot go to a church. I cannot go anywhere. What do I do? I said, you can go to a mosque. Again, Maimonides. And he said, really? He says, well, ask your rabbi. Tell her, Professor Alvarez says that Maimonides allows you to go to a mosque to pray. She came back and says, I'm going to a mosque. Your rabbi said you were right. And she went with several Muslim sisters who took her to a mosque. To me, these are the kinds of experiences that are life-changing because they're not theoretical. This is not head knowledge. This is real lived experience. If you put Muslim, Jews,
And that's what the
Christians,
world needs to know.
that's it. If you put people together, then they stop becoming stereotypes and caricatures. They become three-dimensional, humanized people. And once you humanize another human being, you can't kill them.
Yes, of course.
That's the key. That is the key. And FIU brings one of the experiences that we have. And by the way, as you can see, I'm very proud of my university. It's
Of course.
international university. We bring together all students. I have students from Kuwait, from Indonesia, from India, from Latin America, from Europe, from all over the world in the same space. Once you do that, you can help people. Let me add one more thing. The first donor for the Jaffer Muslim World Studies Center, the first donor who brought a check for $5,000 was my colleague, my dear colleague, Abe Labender. Abe Labender is Jewish. The
Interesting.
first gift to found the Muslim World Studies Center at FIU was from a Jewish college professor at FIU. Listen, what greater example?
Yeah.
What a glorious teaching this man did without saying a word, by simply showing his commitment, because he saw the vision, he understood enough about Islam that this was a worthy project. And again, interfaith dialogue is built into the very structure and essence of our center. And that's the kind of work that we will continue to do. I was doing it before. I'm just very happy to have been asked to join this initiative, and now it's in the hands of Dr. Misbahi and Dr. Jaffer.
The more you speak about the Jaffa Muslim World Study Center, it's the more I have to repeat, we need to have a talk show on that. Because
Absolutely.
I would really love other universities to get this message. Because unfortunately, even though we're in the world of education and intellectualism nowadays, I see a lot of radicalism coming out of universities. Students can be very well brainwashed. And based on their professors, they can be brainwashed. And you know that as an experienced, seasoned professor. And with peace and love in the world, we need not to have that disaster, because they are the future leaders of tomorrow. And if these students are brainwashed with the wrong message, we can be in serious problems. We're already in serious problems. We can be in more serious problems. So, you know, I'm thinking ahead of the game. I know you're in this glory, and we're all happy about, you know, FIU and the Jaffa Muslim World Study Center. But I think you guys need to take this to other universities. So let it spread and let other people do this. And you are the pioneers at this level. We need to get into some conversation now for our viewers, a little more on your message, and especially to the non-Muslim world, our non-Muslim viewers. We got a lot of non-Muslim viewers. Listen, we got people, non-Muslim viewers, who scrutinize this talk show. Some of them would edit it and take what they want and what they don't want. Oh yeah, we got that kind of thing. So a man like you is a blessing. So I want you to give a message. We're going to go on a short break. Yeah, would you believe we have been speaking for more than 25 minutes?
It went
already.
really fast.
It just went fast.
When the conversation is good, time
Yes,
flies.
and educational. So we want to come back after the short break and let our viewers, and especially our non-Muslim viewers, know a little more about, you know, this misconception of Islamophobia. Why or why not or why should. And this misconception that moderate Muslims do not condemn terrorism. Because this is an issue that people who don't like Islam and don't like Muslims blow out of proportion and try to tarnish everyone in this, you know, in human way, creating hate and enmity. So again, it was a pleasure to have you, Professor Daniel Alvarez, and to our viewers out there. You know, I've learned a lot speaking to the professor here, and I'm sure you would have benefited a great deal. We're going on a short commercial break, and when we come back, we will continue our conversation around the professor's experience and advice on the issue of Islamophobia and moderate Muslims, and why others should not think that Muslims in general do not condemn terrorism. Thank you very much.
Al Hikmat Services, serving the Muslim community and non-Muslim community. Dawah and interfaith activities, distribution of Quran and Islamic publications, sponsoring students to study Islam, Al Hikmat Da'i, Dawah and Interfaith Institute. Also, Friday sermons by Sheikh Shafait are live on alhikmattv.com from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Download our free Al Hikmah TV app on your mobile devices. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to donate to Al Hikmat Dawah services online with a credit card or PayPal at alhikmat.com. For more details, contact Al Hikmat office at 1-800-804-0267 or our local number 954-986-0158 and visit us at www.alhikmat.com. Jazakallah khair.
Welcome back to Who is Who on Al Hikmat TV worldwide 24/7 online. Again, it's a pleasure to have with us in the studio Professor Daniel Alvarez. Welcome back to the show, Professor. And God has blessed us. Indeed, we had a wonderful conversation before we went on that short break. I know time just goes, and we have been speaking for the past 30 minutes.
Wow.
So we just got a 10 or 15 minutes again. And in this time, Professor, I would like you to share your experience and your advice, or your advice from your experience to our viewers worldwide on why, especially non-Muslims, why they should not, in America and in the world, have this Islamophobia concept. Why do we have that when before 9/11 and other incidents, we all agree of the radicals and Al-Qaeda and ISIS, we all agree that they are crazy people in all faiths. Those who are not even in a faith are also crazy. You see what I'm saying? But why the rest of the world should not? Is it lack of education? Why this promotion of Islamophobia? Is it hate? Is it anti-Islam? Ignorance? What is it?
Well, you're asking me,
And a non-Muslim voice is very important from your point of view.
You're asking me a very difficult and complex question to answer. But answer I must.
Yeah.
Obviously, 9/11 it was a shockwave.
Yes.
And the question was, very few people knew a lot. Most people didn't know anything about Islam, particularly in the United States. Let's face that. But since 9/11, what has predominated in the Western media, particularly in the United States, is Islam. People like Robert Spencer, who's written books against Islam, the claim that they're making is that Islam is exactly what ISIS and Al-Qaeda says it is. And that is, to me, the root of this problem, of the source of Islamophobia. In other words, if you interpret Islam, if people are telling you Islam is really the interpretation of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, that is Islam, of course you're going to hate this religion. Of course you're going to fear it. But I ask the viewers, particularly non-Muslim viewers, imagine if somebody said to you, the religion of David Koresh in Waco, Texas, and recently, right, we've had a series in the American television about what happened in Waco, Texas, right? This man who confronted the U.S. government, who had a cache of arms in his compound, who claimed to speak for God, who was doing all kinds of crazy things in the compound, sleeping with all kinds of women, doing all kinds of dastardly things. Imagine if people around the world believe the real Christianity is the religion the way Koresh interprets it. And that, I think, is the source of Islamophobia. You take the worst interpretation of Islam. You take the ISIS as the normative interpretation of Islam, and then you tell the world, look, that is really Islam. Of course you're going to fear Islam. Of course you're going to develop a phobia about this religion. Because if ISIS' interpretation of Islam is correct, then Islam is here to kill people.
Of course.
Right? To kill, you are infidels. It's going here to destroy the West. It's going here to destroy Christians and Jews. The only way we can combat Islamophobia is to show the world, and I think that is our responsibility of every educator and every person of goodwill, is to show that that interpretation does not represent what Islam really is about. And I think we have enough historical proof to make that case.
Of course we got. I mean,
but nobody wants to listen to it. That's the problem. Nobody wants to hear that.
But just the existence and the teachings of the Quran and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is directly in line with the teachings of Moses and Jesus. And if people would understand that, we should not have a problem. Now, do you think Muslims should be spending all this time and all this money? I'm just asking you that question now. Why I'm asking you that, it's because, yes, I agree that Muslims, like Christians, need to spread the message of the scripture, the message of God. That I agree, and that we need to do. Areas of commonalities, the Quran tells us, invite the people of the book and discuss areas of commonalities and work together. But a lot of times I've seen our people, and it has been happening a lot recently, spending a lot of time trying to denounce Islamophobia. Do you think we should be spending time to denounce Islamophobia, or should we be spending time to denounce Robert Spencer and people like them and those who write all these anti-Islamic things out of ignorance and misrepresenting Islam? Because that's the root. You got a lot of haters, you got a lot of people who just against the messengers of God, all faiths. Right. I think people like yourself and religious leaders, I mean, politicians may not do that, but people like us, Professor, need to probably denounce these kind of people who are misrepresenting true education.
Right. I think one of the things that I found, again, works is having people come together. And I think we need to do more forums where Jews, Christians, and Muslims come and interact and are able to talk to each other honestly, and be able to ask questions. You know, one of the things that we want to do at FIU is, because we want to work with the community, is to invite people from the media. We're planning a conference to invite people from the media, people who hate Islam, by the way,
excellent,
not friends of Islam, people who are suspicious of Islam, having come to FIU or come to a mosque or come to a synagogue, and they can ask questions of Muslims. Because I believe the most effective way to dissipate, to destroy Islamophobia, is knowledge.
Excellent.
And put people in front of each other. I go back to my,
because knowledge is light.
Knowledge, right. Knowledge is light. There's a verse in the Bible, one of the prophets says that my people perish for lack of knowledge. And if you put people together and they're able to freely ask questions, even difficult questions, then they can say, okay, wait a minute, the idea I had is not correct. I think we need to do that. But there's another problem that we have. I said one is people who are malicious, people who really want to stoke the flames of conflict, right? Who have bought into the Huntington thesis about a class of civilization. They do want to see a class. They do want to see a war between
That's
Muslims.
their mission.
That's
they survive on that.
Right. So what they need to do is they need to portray Islam as the most horrible, aggressive, hostile faith in the world, out to destroy the Jewish Christian West, the Judeo-Christian tradition. That's what we need to combat, and I think we can do it. Look, when my students find out that it was the Muslims who allowed the Jews to come back to Palestine, Israel, when the Christians did not allow them to come back, when my Jewish friends speak about the glory of Jewish civilization in Spain, alongside Muslims in Spain, when even Maimonides, when he was fleeing persecution, he fled not to the Christian West, but to Egypt, Muslim East. That shows you then, at the very core of these faiths, there is no conflict. There is union and unanimity. And the more you read the Quran, and the more you see the Holy Quran and the faith of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, embedded in the faith of all the prophets, Jewish and Christian prophets, then we have so much going forth that we can use that kind of knowledge to go after Spencer and these other people and say, you are cherry picking your hadith and your Quranic verses. You're taking them out of context. You're exploiting these hadith that is not authentic to try to paint an image of Prophet Muhammad as a homicidal maniac. And that's the kind of thing we have to combat. Let me add one more thing. We had a Imam Samra. I hope you bring him one day. He's
yes.
a wonderful Imam, electrical engineer by training, and he's a man after my own heart.
Of course, he used to be a professor at FIU or UM, I think.
Imam Samra.
Yeah. We have been friends also for many years.
He and I feel very close to that man. I think he's a man of God, a very humble and gracious man. And we organized an event at FIU about Sharia, again, to dissipate the ignorance about Sharia. And once I called the Muslims my brothers and sisters, and one student wrote to me and said, how can you as a Christian call a Muslim a brother?
Interesting.
And my reply was, if I thought the religion of Jesus, Isa, and the Quran meant that I could not call a Muslim or a Jew for that matter my brother and sister, then I would have to cease to be a Christian. I wrote that to her.
Wow.
I just found out recently because I went to another event with my good friend Wilfredo Amir Ruiz,
Yeah.
and a Puerto Rican American lawyer. He and
Yes.
I are brothers. He invited me to an event, and there I met an imam who was at the event, whom I found out has been in intense correspondence with that person who wrote to me and called me all kinds of names.
Wow.
And he has been answering her point by point. That is the way to combat Islamophobia, because I think that person who wrote that hostile email to me and who has this horrible view about Islam, the more she interacts with that imam, the more she humanizes him, the less hatred in her heart and the less hostility she will be able to tolerate. Because once you get to know another human being, once you see, right, once you tear down the barriers of suspicion and animosity and hatred, and you come to know them as they are, you're changed, you're transformed.
You know,
that's our mission in life, whether we be Christian, Jews, or Muslims.
because knowledge is light, and light removes darkness.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's the whole reason why we do a show like this, Professor. You know, this show on Who is Who in America and interfaith issues. We have a show called Interfaith Issues, Views and Issues, because of the fact that we want people to better understand each other. By education, we have more tolerance. We learn to love, communicate, and live in a better world. But you got people like that out there. You know, maybe Lucifer and Satan works on their mind and have them deliberately challenging us, which is interesting. It gives us some work to do. But I mean, God bless people like you. And as a Christian in that profession who is teaching world religion and teaching it with such an unbiased view, I think that is phenomenal. Because I'm sure you would agree with me, Professor, that there are people and professors out there and writers and authors who have their own personal agenda. And they sort of insinuate hate and enmity.
Hate sells books. Hate gets politicians
And that's why they do
elected
that.
presidents. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
Excellent.
say
Yeah,
that.
they do that because they campaign on this sort of evil thing.
Right.
And it's very unfortunate. It gives us a harder job, but you know what? I enjoy it. It makes my life not bored, and I'm sure it makes your life not bored. You're just on a busy schedule, and it's a blessed schedule. Now, before we get out of time, because we're on the clock, I wanted to also advise and share to our non-Muslims, because of your experience. You have been there. You teach people. You have been around with a lot of Muslims. You've been with Muslims since many, many, many years ago, before this Islamophobia thing came about. Right. What advice do you have to give to our non-Muslims again, our non-Muslim viewers, that Muslims are not doing anything about terrorism? What do you have to share on that with your experience? You know, a Muslim saying that, Professor, does not speak loud.
No.
You, a Christian professor of Florida International University, sharing your experience and your view on Muslims not speaking out against terrorism will carry a great deal of weight.
Well, first of all, it's a falsehood. Everywhere, whether it be here or the Muslim world, groups of ulamas, Muslim scholars, Muslim leaders, presidents, al-Sisi, King Salman of Saudi Arabia, these people have come out very strongly, even saying to their own preachers, do not spread any message here sympathetic to Al-Qaeda or ISIS, or you're not going to be heading one of those mosques. Al-Sisi got together all the religious leaders and said, we can do better. Right? The narrative has been taken over by Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and that plays into the hand of people in the West who hate us and who want a war, because they feel that's going to give us essentially final victory to their own version of Christianity, which is full of hate. Let's not forget this.
Of course.
There is a version of Christianity being spread in the West that looks at Islam as a religion of the Antichrist and needing to be destroyed. So before people talk about Islam as a religion of hate, we need to look closer at ourselves and see that there are interpretations of Christianity that do believe that we have to destroy people. But again, the issue is the more knowledge you have, the better you can answer these people. So become not only better Muslims, but better informed Muslims. I am challenging Muslims to know their own religion better, and I'm challenging non-Muslims, my brothers and sisters who are Jewish or Christians or belonging to another religion, to become more aware about Islam and not be guided by people who spread stereotypes and hatred. Google, and you will find the protests of Muslims all over the world distancing themselves, whether it be Europe or the Middle East or Asia or the United States, Latin America, distancing themselves from this radical interpretation and those heinous crimes by these terrorists and monsters that are out to destroy humanity, when the purpose of even Sharia is for the sake of humanity, not to destroy. I love the words of Prophet Isa, Jesus, when he says, religion, a man was not made to serve religion. Religion was made in the service of humanity. And that, I believe, is at the core of the teachings of all the prophets.
Of course, of course.
And that, the more knowledge we have, the more we're able to come back. Last point about non-Muslims. Invite a Muslim to your home for dinner. I repeat, invite a Muslim to your home and dinner. You have Muslim neighbors, you have Muslim co-workers, you don't know who they are, get to know them. And that will be the best antidote to combat Islamophobia. Once you get to know these people, then you'll know who they are and what the message of their religion truly is. Invite them to their homes.
Of course. And I'm sure you would agree with me, Professor, that presently there are Muslims worldwide who are spending millions of dollars to be able to try to educate the world that we do not support terrorism. We condemn terrorism. We are anti all this radical extremism. But
it never makes the news. This is the problem. It doesn't make the news.
Because that does not sell in the news.
It doesn't sell.
That's the problem. They use hate, they use animosity. I mean, let's be honest, politicians use hate and animosity to rise into positions. So again, it's like religion. People use religion for their own ego, their own whims and fancies to create hate, wars, and bloodshed. So this is what is happening presently in the world. But anyhow, I mean, we got to conclude the program.
I got to come back.
You got to come back.
That's
the sign that you got to come back. We got to continue this conversation, Emmanuel, to your experience, and I'm sure viewers out there would have learned a lot from having you on this program here, and you got to come back also and set up another interview with the Jaffa Muslim World Study Center, so other universities and other students and people worldwide will have a better idea. And that's the area of education. Yes. That's a flame of knowledge. And may God bless you.
Thank you.
Professor. You got a few seconds to close before I conclude the program.
I have been touched directly by Muslims. I said what happened in Boston, right? How a Muslim came, the students came to my aid. And it's just opened up a totally different view of Islam and who Muslims really are. And that's the challenge we all have to do. When we get to know a Muslim, when Jews and Christians and Muslim Christians, you sit together at the table and break bread, wonderful things happen. And that's the way to combat the forces of hatred and the forces of radicals here and abroad.
Thank you very much. Well, viewers, it has been a pleasure. And I consider it a blessing to have Professor Daniel Alvarez, a professor at Florida International University, to be with us in Al Hikmat studio on this show, Who is Who in America. He's really a who is who in America. A lot of people need to learn from him and his experience. It has been a blessing, and I think it has been a blessing for you, the viewers out there worldwide, to have learned a lot from his experience and what he had to share with us on this program, Who is Who in America, on Al Hikmat TV 24/7 online. Thank you very much again, and God bless. Assalamu alaikum.
Allah